Good morning. My name is Mark Hopkins. I'm serving as worship associate today. I'm a white man. I fall in the category that surveys have where it says and over. So I'm 70 and over, actually 72. I use the pronouns he and him. I'm average height, above average weight. I'm transitioning from brown hair with gray streaks to gray hair with brown streaks. Same for my closely trimmed beard. I'm on the church's board of trustees and a member of the Unitarian Universalist Buddhist Fellowship. We offer a warm welcome to all of you to our spiritual home, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tarpon Springs. We are a community in relationship to promote spiritual growth, social justice, and the arts through the framework and vision of liberal religion. This is an active church, and everyone's invited to participate in all of our activities. To learn more about events, check our church calendar on the website, uutarpon.org, and we'd be happy to talk to you at the coffee hour. Our children and youth are with us at the beginning of the service. Then after the story for all ages, they accompanied Jami, Cruz, our faith formation specialist, to take part in programming geared just for them. If you'd like more information, contact Reverend Kristina or Jami, or drop by the children's room and see the things they create and listen to their stories about what they learn. Odds are you'll learn a thing or two also. I do. For those of us in the building, we have connection cards available in the pews near the hymnals. If you fill one out and put it in the offering plate or give it to one of our greeters, we'll keep in touch with you. If you're watching us on Zoom or YouTube, send us an email at membership@uutarpon.org. There are also small cards to write any joys or sorrows that you'd like to share, and at the end of the service, we'll read them. We are delighted to have Reverend Kristina and Barbara Kostreva teaming today to lead the service when vulnerability and covenant meet. Music is provided by our music director, Bonnie Whitehurst, and again, we welcome you. Our opening music is We Laugh, We Cry, number 354 in the Gray Hymnal. 354, Gray Hymnal. Stand if you like.
And if you feel like you want to stand, you are welcome to stand or sit.
To I am the Reverend Kristina Spaude. I use she, her pronouns and am a white woman. I have chin-length curly brown hair parted on one side with blue eyes. Our opening words this morning come from my friend and colleague Monica Jacobson Tennyson. This is the heart of our faith. What is it that calls you here, that calls you onward, that calls you inward, that leads you homeward? What is it that gives you the power to make that change, to ask that question, to take that journey? What is it that says you have done well, that asks you to learn more, that brings you to stillness, that holds you up in hard times? It is relationship, the beating heart of our faith. It begins when we share this hour, our truths, this air, our hearts. Come, let us worship together.
Our chalice lighting is a moment of spiritual preparation. I'll invite you to join me. These words are from Emily Richards. We gather this morning in a sacred space, kindling a fire that burns here in our chalice and in our hearts. We gather to engage in a different kind of worship. We gather to honor our covenant and encourage and engage in congregational life, doing the necessary work to ensure that this community thrives. We gather together as a people of faith guided by love, a love that burns as bright as the flame in our chalice. We light this chalice as we have done so many times before, for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. We'll now sing Spirit of Life.
For God's sakes, do something with your hair.
Voice from beyond. For our volunteer appreciation. We have a volunteer appreciation today. Carol Baker came to this congregation after moving to Florida to care for her mother. She hasn't been with us for very long, although she is a long-time Unitarian Universalist. And it is important to note that she pours her heart into everything she does for and with all of us. Carol does a good bit of our stream team work, making or helping make the slides each week, operating the camera during the service oftentimes, and participates in our monthly Drop-In Covenant group and our bi-weekly Journey Stories group. She offers her talents with enthusiasm and compassion. Today we say thank you to Carol for all she does for the congregation and all of us. Our story today is Covenant as Wooden Block Tower by Karen G. Johnston. Covenants are the promises we make to each other about how we will be for each other and with each other. Covenants are helpful all the time. They are especially helpful when we are experiencing challenges, such as times of conflict or times when a congregation is either growing or shrinking, when a lot of members have changed, and other times of transition and change. Covenants are also helpful when we are choosing to deepen a meaningful commitment, like when our congregations have been considering to adopt the 8th principle, learning about the Article 2 proposed draft changes to the UUA's bylaws, changes to our own congregation's bylaws, a change in minister, and other times. Covenanting or revisiting covenants can be a good thing to do in this time too, as the pandemic is transitioning into endemic status and we are figuring out what congregational life looks like in these new times. In all of these times, covenants are like loving, active scaffolding, a protective presence that can help us when things get a little shaky. And they work best if everyone takes part in being that protective presence. So I've asked some people to help embody covenant. So the job that they have will be to help make sure that the tower stays standing, the tower as our covenant, and to do it together through cooperation, helping each other play a role while I try to see if I can topple the tower. Okay. So that was me acting like the pandemic or another major stressor, right? Shaking the foundation under the tower to see what happens. But we're going to try some things. Let's see if our covenant helps us keep together and strong. We might. Sometimes it doesn't, right? I don't know if everybody can see we're having a sword fight with the Jenga blocks. So sometimes they crash and wobble, individually or together. Sometimes we remove something that seems like it might be the very heart of our faith, of our tower, something that we feel like we can't live without. Sometimes we have something that doesn't seem like it's going to fit at first. Can we find a way to help connect this new addition? Sometimes we have new people who offer new ideas and energies. They bring their gifts to us so that we might share them together. think Jami's played this game before. We are invited to create something new and different than what we started with, but that is sound and held in love all the same. We are so grateful for you and your willingness to participate and join in covenant with us. And now, we will sing the children to their programming, children and youth to their programming with Jami and Anna. I'm lighting this candle to represent the love and peace of this community, to hold them during their time together until we are together again.
Go now in peace, go now in peace, may the light of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace, may the light of love surround you. May the word of life surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.
Now, now is the time in our service when we take our offering for the work and welfare of this church. Ours is a free faith which must sustain itself financially. Please go to our website, uutopun.org, click on the donate button, or on our website you'll also find our mailing address if you'd like to send a check. For those of us in person, with us in person, your offering in the offering plates as they are passed.
All are welcome in this place. Behold love's amazing grace. All are welcome. All are welcome. Bring your hopes, bring your dreams. Mercy flows and love redeems. All are welcome. All belong. Welcome all the broken-hearted. All who sorrow and despair. You are not alone, for you are God's own. Together we sing and we proclaim. All are welcome in this place. Behold love's amazing grace. All are welcome. All are welcome. Bring your hopes, bring your dreams. Mercy flows in all love's amazing grace, all are welcome, all are welcome. Bring your hopes, bring your dreams, mercy flows and love redeems, all are welcome, all belong. Welcome all who work for justice, bringing hope, charity, and peace. You are not alone, for you are God's own. Together we sing and we proclaim, all are welcome in this place. Behold love's amazing grace, all are welcome, all are welcome. Bring your hopes, bring your dreams, mercy flows and love redeems, all are welcome, all belong.
Before our reading, we will hold a brief moment of silence to let you settle into yourselves and your seats. Take a few deep breaths deep into your belly if that's comfortable for you. Our reading today comes from Tiny Beautiful Things, Advice on Love and Life from Dear Sugar by Cheryl Strayed. Dear Sugar is an advice column that ran on a website in the early 2010s. It's raw, honest, real, vulnerable, pretty sweary, and I fell in love with it. This is one of the exchanges and one of the only ones short enough to fit into a service. Dear Sugar, I'm transgender. Born female 28 years ago, I knew I was meant to be male for as long as I can remember. I had the usual painful childhood and adolescence in a smallish town because I was different, picked on by other kids, misunderstood by my otherwise loving family. 7 years ago, I told my mom and dad I intended to transition. They were furious and disturbed by my news. They said the worst things you can imagine anyone saying to another human being, especially if that human being is your child. In response, I cut off ties with them and moved to the city where I live now and made a new life living as a man. I have friends and romance in my life. I love my job. I'm happy with who I've become and the life I've made. It's like I've created an island far away and safe from my past. I like it that way. A couple weeks ago, after years of no contact, I got an email from my parents that blew my mind. They apologized for how they'd responded when I told them about my plans. They said they were sorry they never understood, and now they do, or at least enough that we could have a relationship again. They said they miss me and they love me. Sugar, they want me back. I cried like crazy, and that surprised me. I know this might sound odd, but I believed I didn't love my parents anymore, or at least my love had become abstract since they had rejected me and because we've not been in touch. But when I got that email, a lot of emotions that I thought were dead came back to life. This scares me. I have made it because I'm tough. I'm an orphan, but I was doing great without my parents. Do I cave and forgive them and get back in touch and even go and visit them as they have asked me to do? Or do I email them and say, thank you, but letting you back into my life is out of the question given our past? Orphan. Dear orphan, please forgive your parents, not for them, for you. You've earned the next thing that will happen if you do. You've remade yourself already. You and your mom and dad can remake this too. The new era in which they are finally capable of loving the real you. Let them. Love them back. See how that feels. What they did to you 7 years ago is terrible. They now know that. They're sorry. They've grown and changed and come to understand things that confounded them before. Refusing to accept them for the people they've become over these years of your estrangement isn't all that different from them refusing to accept you for who you are. It's fear-based and punishing. It's weak rather than tough. You're tough. You've had to ask impossible questions, endure humiliations, suffer internal conflicts, and redefine your life in ways that most people don't and can't even imagine. But you know what? So have your parents. They had a girl child who became what they didn't expect. They were cruel and small when you needed them most, but only because they were drowning in their own fear and ignorance. They aren't drowning anymore. It took them 7 years, but they swam to shore. They have arrived at last on your island. Welcome them. Yours, Sugar.
This
Oh, is it my turn? Oh, it's my turn.
So Barbara and I have had multiple conversations over the time that I have been with this congregation about, well, everything, as you can imagine. But included among them have been conversations around covenant. And so I invited her to participate in one of these dialogue conversations about covenant and vulnerability with me today.
Thank you. Thank you. I also want to thank Mark Hopkins. Where is he? Oh, there he is. Mark was the first one to participate in these conversations, and so he kind of set the stage. I also set the stage. I just want to be grateful to the whole congregation, and especially to Bonnie. Bonnie has always chosen such great songs. Not only am I invited into conversation, we are all invited into this sanctuary, in this place. It is just amazing today, the stage that's been set. I'm just so happy. They did such a great job with the idea of covenant, piecing it all together and coming together again. So good morning. Happy Sunday. Welcome. I'm glad you're here, and I'm grateful for all of you. Welcome to this world and to this church and to this experience. My name is Barbara Kostreva. I use she, her pronouns, and am a white woman, and I have short gray brown hair, mostly gray. Thanks, Mark, to that comic of an introduction. It's wonderful to see that. I've had it said to me that it's not necessary to use these pronouns. And you may think that using descriptive pronouns is unnecessary. But my 30-something daughter has informed me that indeed it is necessary. And I'm realizing that saying these words provides a reminder to myself that there are other people that look at themselves differently, and they want to be recognized differently. So taking this time and making this space for the next person to be their authentic self and to be recognized as who they are is really important. And to be recognized, Unitarian Universalism, its aim is to be inclusive. We want to widen the circle. We want to draw people in, which means we have to make space for others. Sometimes the best thing I can do for someone, using UU vocabulary, is to be a witness, to recognize, to be a witness, to actively look, to actively see, to actively recognize, and accept without judgment who they are, allowing you to be your authentic self. I have been a UU for over 20 years, in 4 congregations in 4 different states, always active in membership development and adult RE. These are my passions. And as Reverend Kristina said, we've talked about covenant often. I was there at the time that we created the covenant that we have presently, and we are missing the older folks that were there at that time as well. So as Mark mentioned, we have a new generation, older folks. So anyway, there is an important historical institutional significance to covenant that deserves recognition, as well as the issues intertwined in covenant. The first is our religious declaration of freedom. This particular characteristic distinguishes UUism from other mainstream religions. Our roots in the free church provide for our liberty to determine how we, this particular group of people, not a larger church or bishops or government, but us, this freely gathered group of people, us. How will we relate to each other? How will we behave together? It is a declaration that the practice of religion is to be determined by my group of people, by our group of people, our congregation. We can make up rules or guidelines of how we want to relate to each other. The second intertwined role in what covenant means is a description of how we relate. And this has historical significance because this form of covenant, this word, this use of this word, is a particular meaning. It's a form of agreement or promise. And it's kind of like poetry. We've had haikus used here. We've had different kinds of forms where you have to have a paragraph, and so many things have to be reminded or restated in that form of poetry. It's a particular format. Well, our format is a promissory relationship. What seems important now to understand about covenant, with the idea of covenant as a descriptor of how we walk together, is the old UU language, the old religious language, how we walk together. And now we've moved into a moment of journeying, journey stories. And so one of the phrases Reverend Christine has brought to us is perhaps we need to look at how do we relate in our journey together in community. So, as Mark showed me, questions. What's your understanding of the role of covenant in today's UU congregation? And I'm going to give you all my questions and let you free roll, okay? What's your understanding of the role of covenant in today's UU congregation? Why does covenant matter? And what is the purpose? Poetry? Guidance? Something else?
Thank you, Barbara. So, covenant shapes everything about our congregations. Everything. Our polity, our theology, our gathering, at least here in the US and Canada. Different arguments might be made for our European siblings. Covenants shape our relationships with one another and with that which is greater than we are. Covenants also connect us to and with our history and our future. The use of covenant in our faith dates back directly, surprisingly, to the Puritans and the Pilgrims, who were Congregationalists. And our history stems directly from that, even though theologically we are a tad on the other end of the spectrum. Our faith is non-creedal, at least now. Hasn't always been this way, which makes covenant the foundation of our faith in many ways. There's no creed that binds us. There's no dogma. There's no particular commitment to anything which is beyond ourselves. And so we are left with each other, which is a gift. And covenant is one of the ways that we share that gift. We make space and promises to be held together. Covenant creates the container for us, offering guidance to call us forward from stuckness and calling us back into relationship. James Luther Adams said that church is a place where you get to practice what it means to be human. Covenant then is aspirational. It gives us a sense of direction for growth and who and how we want to be. And if I might quote my grandfather, as my mother did as I was leaving my apartment this morning to come to church, it's not the speed, but the direction. And for Unitarian Universalists, it is not the speed, but the direction for all of us. Covenant gives structure to the inherent relationality of our faith and our voluntary association to be together, right? You're not here out of some sense of guilt or sense of having sinned so gravely that you need to be saved. You are here because you choose to be here. That is the nature of being a heretic. You choose. That's what heretic means. Choose. Connie Goodbread observed, and continues to do so, that faith development is all we do. Unitarian Universalism is the faith we teach. The congregation is the curriculum. This is where covenant is practiced. This is where the proverbial rubber meets the road. This is where we learn how to be in relationship with one another, the good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent. Again, covenant is what binds us in our theological diversity. I know we have a number of Buddhists and Buddhish people here. We have people who have come from Jewish traditions, people who have come from Christian traditions. In other congregations, there are people from Hindu, from Islam, from many different traditions, as well as our pagan folks and our atheists, right? We have plenty of atheists and non-theists among us as well. And so there is no uniformity around what we believe outside of the fact that we believe that being in relationship is the most important thing. Covenant is a commitment to being willing to be in conversation. For me, that is always the foundation of our relationships, that invitation to conversation that is always an open door. I also want to note, although these were not directly questions that you asked, but I was thinking about this morning as I was getting myself ready, this stole is an expression of my commitment to our faith, to Unitarian Universalism. This stole was given to me when I was ordained by 2 congregations. If you are not aware, the only body that is able to ordain ministers in our faith is the congregation. There's no ecclesiastical body, the president of the UUA, no person, no body has the right to ordain a minister other than a congregation. And as I walk around here in the chancel, you notice that I remove my footwear. I do so because that is also an expression of a covenant for me. It is my covenant with that which is greater than we are. It is a covenant in recognition that this ground is holy. This ground is sacred because of our coming together. And so I remove my footwear in recognition and respect for reverence.
Thank you, Reverend Kristina. Thank you very much. As I said, I've been in UU a long time, and one of my passions was adult RE. And every congregation that I've been in, 3 congregations, but I've also been involved in district work. We used to have districts, now we have regions in terms of the UUA. And she mentions it's only a congregation that can make a minister, can call the minister. We don't get it sent from anybody else. So this kind of religious education, I was really fortunate to receive in other congregations. And we are so small that we don't have an ongoing religious ed program until Reverend Kristina came to actually create one for the youth. We still need to touch ourselves. And I thank Bonnie as well, because she has been giving us lots of religious education through the songs she has chosen. The spiritual grounding is here. It is here, and making a holy space. That's another one of my favorite songs, is making that holy space. Part 2. Alice Blair Wesley's lectures in 2000-2001 referred to a covenant as a promise to practice working together in the spirit of mutual love. All of these bits have importance in our history of Unitarian Universalism. That practice of working together and that practice in the spirit of mutual love. Our UUCTS covenant, we strive to look for and encourage the best in each other as we move toward justice, peace, and love for both ourselves and the world. And when we fall short, we will seek understanding, reconciliation, and a return to covenant. There's a lot packed in that covenant. I will admit I had some difficulty for a while. Our covenant is about action. We are striving to see the best in each other. And the action of moving toward justice, peace, and love. And then a recognition that indeed we will fall short. If covenant is about behavior, can we think of church as a practice field for life? Participation in church activities offers opportunity to learn and practice skills, such as sharing, listening, gratitude, leading, discussing, forgiving, and so forth. All of these attributes are skills of love. Perhaps a skill of love is the commitment to repeatedly try to rebuild and recreate relationship. I realized in my growing up, my parents were pretty stoic about emotions. You didn't show them. You didn't have opportunities to congratulate yourself or others. And I realized that in teaching my children, sadly, I continued a similar attitude. You're strong, you're capable, go to it, kid. Gave them lots of freedom and never tried to really judge whether it was good or bad, which was a mistake. Church and covenant groups have been really important to me in these 20 years. It has really given me the opportunity to see how other people raise their kids, how we can share with each other, and particularly seeing love being expressed without having been said. And then through the readings and the songs, I found descriptive words that could practice noticing and paying attention and giving gratitude to others. And I'll also admit that the mindfulness meditation group has been a success with me. It made me really bring my practice of self-reflection into daily work of my own. But that idea of mutual love, that goes way back in history. And we are here practicing that. So I ask questions, again, to you. Where and how does love come into play? how do you feel or think about the role of the church to provide opportunity to practice love? Third, covenant is a particular way of being in relationship. Are there specific characteristics in this church relationship that can be identified? Should I save the fourth one for another, or should I go ahead and include it now? I'll go ahead and put it in, and she'll get to it eventually.
Yeah.
In our particular UUCTS covenant, I find that last part about falling short, it's difficult. Who recognizes when we fall short? Who recognizes this? When do I know that I haven't, or when do I know that I have? Reverend Kristina has brought this wonderful recognition of people, and it's a reminder every time she does it for gratitude and being grateful to the other more often than I had before. To go back to this falling short is a problem. Well, how does it get called, my question, how does it get called out in order that we can move into the seek understanding part of the covenant?
I think I cherry picked when I made notes here, so we'll see what we get. So I want to say first that I view the UUCTS covenant as an attempt to practice both action and reflection. While there are definitely more action verbs, the striving and seeking, there's also the fact that the seeking is for understanding. So I see that it's action and reflection, which is really important to me. When I was doing my chaplaincy training, that was the model that we used, was action, reflection, action, reflection. So the idea being that we would practice something, learn from it, and act better the next time, and learn from that and act better, even better the next time. So I see both parts as attempted to be held in that covenant. Love shows up everywhere and grounds us and our actions, or at least it can, right? It doesn't always, life doesn't always feel loving to us, but when we seek it, when we seek to practice it, we certainly notice it better. Again, covenants are about being in relationships, and there was a mention about covenant as being about behavior, and I want to say that behavioral covenants are generally separate than an actual living, practicing covenant, but also important in their own ways. Love is an expression especially of our universalist theology, the idea that we are all held in and by a love that will not ever let us go. Again, as James Luther Adams said, church is a place where we get to practice, where we get to go to practice what it is to be human. And Connie Goodbread's words about faith formation is all we do, Unitarian Universalism is all we teach, and the congregation is
The curriculum.
the curriculum. Thank you. Got most of them out. So there is an argument to be made about congregations as the embodiment and practice of our hope and love for each other and the world. We gather to practice that shared commitment, that shared sense of vision, that shared practice of being together with like-minded or like-hearted or just generally liked people. Our Unitarian Universalist and Unitarian Universalist emphasis on the present, as in this moment, and our theological diversity means that there is no requirement, again, for having an understanding or relationship specifically with an idea of that which is greater than we are. Means that we, again, have to practice being in relationship with one another. If you go into another congregation, either Christian or Jewish or Muslim or Hindu, there are set beliefs around who you worship, when you worship, why you worship. You have creeds and things that you've committed to. We don't have that in the same way. So if something happens with another congregant, you can always be like, well, I'm still right with Jesus, so everything's okay, right? We don't have that. Who knows if we're right with Jesus? Who knows if we're right with anything that's beyond ourselves? The thing is that we have to be in right relationship with each other, because ultimately, in this moment, this is what we have. I have a note here about the importance of reviewing covenant and the need for shared meaning. I'm not sure what I was trying to say there, so I'm going to skip it now, but if it makes any sense to you, hold on to it. There is the idea with covenant, the importance, that idea of a voluntary association, that choosing to be together, that wanting to journey together. There's an expectation that there will be breaks. I've preached before about this. I mean, if you open the Bible, right, there's all these stories about God is like, okay, let's make a covenant. And the people are like, yeah, we'll make a covenant. And God turns around and people have broken the covenant. And God's like, what happened? And they're like, we people, sorry, we'll make a new covenant, right? Over and over and over again. I mean, like, this is something to be expected. And sometimes people come into our congregations and they think that, like, covenant is such a sacred thing that is meant to be plastered on the wall, and we're here to admire it, but it doesn't mean anything in actuality. But that's not its purpose. Its purpose is to help us be in relationship and in conversation with one another. To answer your last question, my answer is that anytime any party of a covenant says that there's been a falling short, there needs to be a conversation. This is one of those tricky things where both no one and everyone is responsible for maintaining its health, for its vitality, and for maintaining the sense of togetherness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're already after 11:30.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and present Rain,
Okay,
and we'll end it at that.
okay.
Reverend Kristina is so wonderful in presenting that it is about continuous conversation, working together. And so I did want to wrap up with that after all this reflection about our covenant, looking at these words, striving to look for and encouraging the best, moving toward justice, and when we fall short, we will seek understanding and reconciliation. What does reconciliation look like? As Reverend Kristina mentioned, we're all to contribute into finding what that looks like. It's a conversation among everyone. So I learned something, no, I don't even know if I learned it. It's a repetition of learning. Our covenant seems to be saying to me that to reach reconciliation is using a practice that's been dubbed RAIN, R-A-I-N. RAIN, R, is recognize that there's a problem. 2, A, allow that there is a problem and it's come up. 3, I, to investigate. Investigate the issues, name them, identify them without blame. N, nurture each other, bringing compassion to difficult emotions and an expansive love to continue the practice with each other. She's mentioned JLA several times. James Luther Adams, I don't know what the name, I forget now. Being human religiously. How to live. Being human religiously. And if you take religiously as a religion, is dealing with the human struggles. So that's what we're doing. We're dealing with the human struggles and practicing them here. He spoke to our loyalties about what's our highest worth. And it seems from our covenant, our highest worth is to get back into relationship again, to return to relationship, not give up on relationship. The name of the service today was How Does Vulnerability Meet Covenant? Or where does it meet? And I'm asking, and I'm believing that this is true, that the suggestion of vulnerability is related to reconciliation. Commitment in covenantal relationship includes the courage to be vulnerable, the courage to continue conversation.
Okay, I have lots of really good things to share, so I'm going to blitz right through this, even though
Okay.
we're over time. So again, the practice of covenant requires vulnerability. Being in relationship is hard, right? Any relationship that you have, siblings, partners, friends, other people, being in relationship is hard. As a culture, we have shifted increasingly towards individualism and capitalism and consumerist tendencies. And so we've gotten even worse at being at relationship in each other, because there's always the sense that well, if I don't like this, I'm taking my marbles and going home. White supremacy culture also tells us that breaks and failures are something to be ashamed of and prevents us from having deeper connections and hard conversations. A true practice of covenant, of relationship, requires us to hear how we've hurt or harmed one another, to apologize, and to try again. To me, this is one of the most vital parts of being vulnerable. That reconciliation, too, is a vulnerable practice and a practice in vulnerability. Finding a way to come back together after disagreement or rupture is difficult for everyone involved. Not just for the person who has perhaps done the hurting or the harming, but the person who's on the receiving end of it. We're not very good either at being able to say, ouch, that hurt, and to explain why. Wanting to have that conversation, to invite a healing, to invite a scar to form instead of leaving an open wound to fester. Again, both everyone and no one is wholly responsible for maintaining a covenant and the relationship that makes it function. This is one of the greatest challenges of our faith, that no one and every single one of us is equally responsible. Vulnerability and covenant both also are practices that invite us to be our best, which means our most authentic selves, which is really hard because that's not what we are asked to do or to be in this world. We're asked to create masks, we're asked to function in particular ways, and covenant and vulnerability ask us to lower those shields, to break down the walls, and to reach into each other's hearts.
Thank you very much. And I apologize to all of you for me pushing this further, but I thank you so much for getting through that. That whole idea is critical. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we are going to sing our closing hymn in the Teal hymnal, number 1028, The Fire of Commitment. Feel it, everyone.
And you just may want to feel like standing.
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, song, both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live in assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. Where the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion need to call us on our way, when we live in assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
In The Gift of Faith, Jean Harrison Newyer has written, in the lore of ancient China, there is a story of a philosopher who was asked, "Where is the road called hope?" He replied, "It does not exist, but as people move upon it, it comes into being." I invite you to continue moving forward, journeying together with me on this path called hope.
We will build this house with the strength of our arms, with the love of our neighbors. We will build this house. We will build this house as a shelter from all harm. With the open door of justice, we will build this house. A house of warmth, a house just right, a house to keep away the darkest night. A house of hope, a house of peace, a house where all within may safely sleep. We will build this house with the strength of our arms, with the love of our neighbors. We will build this house. We will build this house as a shelter from all harm. With the open door of justice, we will build this house. A house that's built to remind us all of how we were connected, whether great or small. A house of dignity, a house without shame, a house with laws bearing all our names. We will build this house with the strength of our arms, with the love of our neighbors. We will build
Our chalice ritual has two parts, like bookends. At the beginning, the chalice lighting invited us into spiritual preparation. And as we extinguish the chalice, it's an invitation for reflection, for spiritual merits, benefits we'd like to take away with us. We close with these words from Emily Richards. May you leave this time together changed. May the promises you have made to yourself about who you want to be feel closer to the reality of who you are right now. May you share that feeling of transformation wherever you go. May it spread into every word, deed, thought, and interaction until we are all changed, transformed, and transforming together, becoming our better selves.